A routine stop at a gas station became a courtroom showdown for two Lafayette police officers. They didn't realize that the man they were cuffing over a vague description would become their judge the very next day. The gas pump clicked off, but Clifton took his time, his gaze fixed on the digital display. $63. It had been an exhausting day, spent mediating a bitter property dispute between two families. Clifton Baynes was a master of his craft. The kind of man who could spend 6 hours in a windowless room listening to arguments and still emerge with a resolution everyone could accept. That Tuesday afternoon in Lafayette, Louisiana, all Clifton wanted was a bottle of water, maybe a black coffee, and to get back to his wife. He was dressed casually, jeans, a simple gray hoodie, sneakers, a stark contrast to the suit he'd worn earlier. His new tinted window hybrid SUV turned a few heads, but he was used to that. What he wasn't prepared for was what happened next. As he reached for the gas cap, he saw movement in his side mirror. Two Lafayette PD cruisers were pulling up at strange angles, one blocking the exit, the other right behind him. He blinked, unconcerned at first, but then the doors swung open rapidly. A command from behind him cut through the air. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." He turned slowly. "Everything all right, officer?" Two officers approached. One older with a strong jaw and a buzz cut, the other younger and lankier, probably in his early 30s, exuding an obvious tension. "Hands where I can see them now," the older one commanded. Clifton raised his hands, a key fob still in one. "Is there a problem? Is this your vehicle?" "Yes, it is. Registered in my name. My ID and registration are inside." The older officer, whose name tag read Mullery, gestured to his partner. "Check it out." Clifton tried to remain calm. "May I ask what this is about?" "Car matches the description from a theft reported on Moss Street," Mullery replied, circling him like a predator sizing up its prey. "Moss Street is a long road," Clifton pointed out, "and this is a very common car." "You got a receipt for that gas?" the younger officer asked. Clifton gave a tight nod. "In the cup holder. You can grab it if you want." "Don't move," Mullery snapped. That's when a high school kid in a Letterman jacket across the lot pulled out his phone and started recording. Clifton saw it but didn't react. He kept his hands visible, his voice steady. "My driver's license and registration are in the glove compartment." "Reach for it and you're resisting," Mullery warned. "Turn around." "You're detaining me for driving my own car?" Mullery didn't answer. He seized Clifton's wrist and twisted it behind his back. "You can explain it downtown." The cold click of the handcuffs was sharp. Clifton flinched but didn't resist. The younger cop, now looking uneasy, seemed to have second thoughts. "Sir, I'm just going to check your ID real quick," he mumbled. "It's just standard procedure." Clifton said nothing. He was focused on the teen still recording, his eyes conveying a silent plea. "Remember this." Traffic slowed. A couple of people got out of their cars, confused. A woman inside the gas station walked out, already on her phone. Mullery pushed Clifton against the hood. "Got any weapons on you?" "No drugs." "Been drinking?" "I just finished mediating a property dispute. I'm going home." Silence. The younger cop returned with the registration and ID, his voice a little softer. "It says here Judge Clifton Baynes." Clifton didn't move. "That's correct." But Mullery was defiant. "People lie all the time. We'll sort it out." Just then the station manager came outside. "Y'all need to back off. That man is in here twice a week. He's not who you think he is." More phones appeared. More silence. Clifton was put in the back of the cruiser. No words, no struggle, just the quiet slam of the door. A surreal experience for a man who had seen this happen to others but never expected it himself. But inside that squad car, Clifton already knew this wouldn't end with a simple complaint form. The cruiser smelled of old fries and body odor. Clifton sat silently, his wrists bound tightly in steel, his back pressed into the cracked leather seat. Every bump in the road scraped the cuffs against bone. He didn't speak, not yet. Not as they merged onto I-10, not when the dispatcher radioed in a routine check. The younger officer, Bryce Fennick, kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. He looked new, maybe 2 years on the job. He cleared his throat. "You work downtown?" Clifton didn't answer right away. "Yes." "Law firm?" He let the silence hang. "Something like that." Sergeant Mullery, riding shotgun, twisted around and glared. He's being smart. Probably Googled a judge's name and put it on a fake ID. Fenwick looked uncertain. His records are clean. Plates match. ID has a legit hologram. I don't care, Mullery snapped. He had an attitude, claimed he was a judge. That's a big claim. I didn't claim, Clifton said quietly. I am. Mullery scoffed. Well, Judge, maybe you should have dressed the part. Maybe you should have stayed in your courtroom instead of being in a hoodie, driving a $60,000 car at a gas station known for stolen goods. Clifton stared straight ahead. So, that's how you judge character? No, Mullery said flatly. That's how I stay alive. Silence again. Clifton leaned his head back, counting the seconds between freeway signs, thinking about his wife's voice that morning, the blueberry scone she'd insisted he take. He wondered if she'd found out yet. She worked in legal advocacy, she would know before they even reached the precinct. Fenwick finally spoke again, his voice softer this time. Sir, if your ID checks out, they'll clear this up fast. It's just protocol, you know? Clifton met his gaze in the mirror. It's not protocol. It's a presumption. Fenwick's grip tightened on the steering wheel, but he didn't argue. The cruiser exited near Jefferson Street and pulled into the precinct's side lot. A small group of officers stood smoking by a dumpster. Their chatter stopped as they watched Clifton being led from the car. One officer's eyebrows shot up. Wait, ain't that? Mullery yanked the cuffs tighter. Keep moving. Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh. Clifton's eyes adjusted as they passed desks piled with paperwork, buzzing monitors and stale coffee cups. No one offered a greeting. A few officers looked up, recognition dawning. Detective Elena Navarro, a woman in the middle of a conversation, froze, her mouth agape. She stepped forward. Mallory, what the hell are you doing with Judge Baynes? Mallory didn't hesitate. Picked him up for questioning, possible match with a suspect vehicle. Have you lost your mind? Navarro's voice was a sharp blade. Uncuff him now. Mullery hesitated. We were following procedure. Navarro's face darkened. No, you weren't. You just put handcuffs on a sitting circuit court judge in front of a gas station. What part of that is procedure? Fenwick looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Clifton's eyes met Navarro's. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. She nodded. You'll have one in 5 minutes. The cuffs were removed. Clifton didn't rub his wrists. He simply stood tall, adjusted his hoodie and looked around the room. Every eye was on him. The officers who had been laughing earlier now stood still, avoiding his gaze. Navarro lowered her voice. You want me to call your wife? Clifton shook his head. She's probably already on her way. Even as they offered coffee and apologies, Clifton wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about accountability. Clifton sat in a small interview room, clean and plain, with a chipped table, 3 plastic chairs and a flickering fluorescent bulb. No cuffs now, just a plastic cup of water and an unopened folder on the table. The door had been closed for 6 minutes. It wasn't jail, but it wasn't freedom either. Through the glass pane he could see 2 officers in hushed conversation. One was Lieutenant Devra Linley, Internal Affairs. Short, with a sharp voice and intelligent eyes, she kept glancing at him, her arms folded as if trying to read his mind before she came in. He didn't look away. He wanted them to feel his stillness. Eventually the door creaked open and she entered, notepad in hand. Judge Baynes. Miss Linley. She sat down without being asked. I don't think I need to explain how bad this looks. Agreed. He studied her face, trying to see if she was angry, embarrassed, or bitter. He took a sip of water. I'm not here to rant, but I will be clear. I expected nothing less. Clifton put the cup down. I was followed without reason, detained without justification, searched without consent and cuffed in public. Humiliated in front of strangers. All because I was at a gas pump in the wrong car, wearing the wrong clothes. She clicked her pen. The video's already making the rounds. Dozens of calls have come in. He nodded. It'll be on national media by tomorrow morning. Are you planning to file a formal complaint? I'm not sure a complaint covers what happened. She raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? He leaned back, looking at the ceiling. I want the truth on the record. I want accountability. Not just for me, but for every person without a title who goes through this every day. A silence hung between them. She jotted something down. Can I ask, do you know Officer Mullery personally? No, but I've heard of him. He's been through 3 misconduct reviews in the last 6 years, hasn't he? Linley didn't respond. And Fenwick, relatively new, clean file but passive, she admitted. Didn't stop the arrest. Didn't question it until I was already in the car. He didn't escalate it either. That doesn't excuse him. I didn't say it did. Linley paused. Judge, I'm sorry. Clifton held her gaze. I don't need your apology. I need your office to do its job. She nodded firm. You'll be contacted within the hour by the Oversight Committee. They'll initiate the review. There will be a hearing. Good. Will you recuse yourself? He smiled faintly. No. I won't be the one on trial. But I will be the one presiding. Linley leaned forward. That's highly unusual. So is arresting a judge at a gas station for driving his own car. Another beat of silence. Finally she stood. You're free to go. Do you need a ride? He got up. My wife's outside. As he stepped into the hallway, eyes followed him, but not with curiosity this time. It was recognition. Navarro was waiting near the exit, phone in hand. She's parked on Monroe, she said softly. She's upset. Of course she is. She brought your court robe. Clifton exhaled slowly. Navarro added, you know this hearing is going to be political, messy, loud. I'm aware. Are you ready for that? Clifton looked at her. I've been ready. I just didn't know it was my turn yet. But outside that building, in the passenger seat of his wife's Prius, he wasn't thinking about the noise. He was thinking about the silence he could finally break. By the time Clifton closed the front door that evening, the video had already surpassed 120,000 views. It had gone beyond local Facebook groups, hitting Twitter, Reddit, and even TikTok. The 10-second grainy clip of a black man in a gray hoodie being pinned against a silver SUV, calmly repeating, I'm not resisting, was looping with captions like, he's a judge, and they didn't care. His wife, Geneva, had the news on mute. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone in hand, her jaw tight. She didn't have to yell. You good? She asked. Clifton nodded. Physically, yes. She handed him a folded court robe. You have court tomorrow. He took it gently, then leaned against the counter. They just stood there in the quiet. Outside, neighbors were pulling trash bins to the curb. Inside, the weight of the day lingered. Did you eat anything? She asked. Didn't feel like it. Geneva moved from the stove. I made gumbo. You'll eat. He didn't argue. Her phone vibrated again. She glanced at the screen, scoffed, and turned it face down. Who was it? Journalists, blogs, a law professor from Tulane. People I haven't talked to in years. Everybody's got something to say now. Clifton exhaled. I didn't want to become a headline. You didn't. They made you one. He sat at the table, the robe draped across his lap. Geneva placed a bowl in front of him, sat opposite, and rested her chin on her hand. They had you in cuffs, babe. You of all people. I don't get special treatment. Maybe you should, she said flatly. You've earned it. He stirred the gumbo in silence, then said quietly, how many others had no camera watching them? No wife calling contacts? No badge to flash later. Geneva blinked, then stood up and retrieved her iPad. She opened it, tapped a few times, and turned it toward him. A local news station was running the clip. The headline read, Lafayette judge mistakenly arrested at gas station. Investigation launched. He read it twice. Mistakenly arrested, he said aloud. Geneva raised an eyebrow. That's what they're going with. A new voice came from the hallway. Dad. Their daughter Marin, 19, a sophomore at LSU home on break, peeked around the corner. Her curls were in a loose bun, eyes puffy from crying. Hey, sweetheart. She walked into the kitchen and hugged him without a word. Saw the video at Sam's place, she whispered. I thought it was fake at first. Thought someone had edited your face onto it. Clifton pulled back and looked her in the eyes. I'm okay. No, you're not, she said quietly. But you will be. Later that night, the three of them sat in the living room. Geneva scrolled through comments, some supportive, some vile. One caught her eye. Doesn't matter if he's a judge. If you act suspicious, you get treated like a suspect. She read it aloud. Clifton shook his head. That's the danger right there. Suspicion without cause, and the idea that dignity is something you have to prove. Marin looked at him. So what are you going to do? He turned off the lamp beside him. I have court at 9 a.m. Geneva studied his face. Are you going to recuse yourself? No. You sure? He looked at both of them. I've spent my life trying to be impartial, but that doesn't mean I should be absent. But as he walked toward the bedroom, one thing was already decided in his mind. He would not allow tomorrow to be just another internal slap on the wrist. The Lafayette Municipal Courthouse had seen its share of drama, land disputes, fraud, political feuds. But that Wednesday morning, the tension wasn't about what was inside the courtroom just yet. It was about who was walking in. Clifton arrived early in a dark suit, no robe yet. Geneva had parked 2 blocks away to avoid the reporters. Marin stayed home, still shaken, but had texted, "We're watching." The courthouse hallway was already crowded. He recognized some local legal professionals, but others were strangers. Law students, activists, people who had seen the video and wanted to witness the outcome. He passed a clerk whispering, "That's him. That's Judge Baynes." Another nodded. "The one from the gas station video." He didn't stop, just walked straight into his chambers, closed the door and sat at his desk. 10 minutes later, a soft knock. "Come in." Lieutenant Linley stepped in, holding a manila envelope. "We ran the footage through internal review last night," she said, handing it to him. Clifton didn't open it. "Let me guess, it confirms what the public saw?" "Yes. From multiple angles. Witness statements too. We have 6, including the gas station attendant and the teen who filmed it." Clifton tapped the envelope. "Any comment from the officers?" Linley hesitated. "They've lawyered up." He looked up. "Both of them?" She nodded. "Trent Mullery is being represented by a union attorney. Bryce Fennick retained private counsel this morning." He leaned back. "Interesting." She sat across from him. "Judge, they didn't know who you were. That's part of their defense. That's the problem, Deborah. They shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me like a person." A short silence stretched between them. She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed email. "You're going to want to see this." He scanned the page. It was an urgent request from the District Ethics Board for a preliminary misconduct hearing today in his courtroom. Clifton raised an eyebrow. "Today? They say it's in the public interest. The video's gone national. We're getting attention from the Justice Department." He stood slowly. "Then let's not keep anyone waiting." Courtroom 2C was full before 9 a.m. Reporters lined the back wall. One local blogger was live-streaming from her phone. Every seat was taken, and the murmurs grew louder until the bailiff walked in. "All rise." Then silence. Clifton stepped through the side door wearing his robe, his posture straight. He didn't scan the room. He didn't look at the cameras. He took his seat and spoke with clarity. "You may be seated." Chairs creaked, whispers died down. "This is a preliminary review hearing regarding an incident that took place yesterday involving 2 members of the Lafayette Police Department. I will preside." At the defense table, Mullery sat stiffly, his lawyer whispering to him. Fennick looked pale, his hands clenched under the table. His attorney, a woman in her 40s with sharp glasses, whispered, "Just breathe." Clifton's eyes fell briefly on them. Neither returned the gaze. He cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to make one thing very clear. This hearing is not about me. It's about conduct, evidence, and the standards we claim to uphold." The bailiff brought forward the first file. Photos from the arrest, time-stamped bodycam footage, and the written statement from the gas station manager. Geneva watched from the front row, her face unreadable. Clifton opened the first folder slowly. "Officer Mullery, Officer Fennick, you are both entitled to representation. This hearing will proceed with full transparency. You'll have the opportunity to respond." Mullery shifted in his seat. The moment hung. And then for the first time Clifton looked up and met their eyes. "You placed a man in handcuffs for fueling his car." Neither officer spoke. Clifton paused, letting the silence do its work. But just as the courtroom settled, a familiar voice came from the doorway. Someone who hadn't spoken yet but who had seen everything. The night before the hearing, Clifton barely slept. He never did before something big. Not during bar exams, not when Marin was born, and certainly not now. The house was quiet. Geneva had gone to bed early, knowing her husband needed space. The hallway light was left on, a comfort since Marin was little. Clifton sat at the dining table surrounded by case files and notes. The manila envelope from Internal Affairs sat unopened next to his laptop. He didn't need to see it again. He remembered every second. The cold metal on his wrists, the look in the older officer's eyes, the younger one's averted gaze. He hadn't rewatched the video. Instead he kept looking at the still frame everyone was sharing online. It showed him turned slightly, hoodie wrinkled, face calm but tired. Behind him, Officer Mullery's hand was on his shoulder. You couldn't see the badge but you could see the power. He considered not wearing his robe the next day, of just standing in plain clothes and speaking as himself. But that would feed into the idea that his identity was separate from his authority. No, he would wear the robe not to prove anything but because they needed to see it. From the living room, the muted TV hummed with late-night cable news. A panel of 3 legal analysts debated his case. One mispronounced his last name. None had called him. None had asked how he was. He shut it off. In the quiet, he stared at an old photograph of his father, George Baynes, on the bookshelf. George had been a city bus driver for 30 years. He used to say, "You don't have to wear a badge to know right from wrong." That had always stuck with Clifton. At 1:34 a.m. he pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. Not a speech but questions. The kind that couldn't be dodged with rehearsed answers. Why did you run my plates before speaking to me? Why did you assume a stolen vehicle without probable cause? Why was resisting added when there was no struggle? Why did only one of you speak up afterward? He read them back slowly. No fancy language, just plain truth. Then he wrote a final question and underlined it twice. Would this arrest have happened if I looked like you? He didn't know if he'd ask it in court, but he needed to write it. By morning, Geneva came into the kitchen to find him already dressed, his shirt buttoned, tie perfectly aligned, robe over his arm. He poured coffee. Did you sleep? A little. She handed him the mug. Ready? He took a long sip before answering. Not really. She smiled softly. Good. Means your heart's still working. They rode together in silence. The streets were waking up, school buses, sunlight through the trees. But something felt different now. Something had shifted. Outside the courthouse, a line of people had already formed. Some carried signs, others held folded newspapers. A few had come from out of town just to witness the hearing. Clifton took a deep breath before getting out of the car. Geneva squeezed his hand once and let go. He walked through the courthouse entrance slowly, not as a man seeking personal justice, but as someone preparing to ask hard questions on behalf of everyone who couldn't sit in his seat. But the moment he stepped into chambers, a name on a witness list caught his attention. Someone unexpected had just been added. The energy inside Courtroom 2C wasn't loud. It was taut, controlled. Everyone sat a little straighter. The air felt heavy. At 9:01 a.m. Clifton entered in his full robes. He didn't scan the crowd or glance at the cameras. His eyes went straight to the defense table. Officer Trent Mullery sat on the left, stiff as a board, eyes locked ahead. Officer Bryce Fenwick was beside him, visibly shaken, his fingers pressed together. Behind them, 2 rows of department observers watched. In the front row, Geneva watched her husband, hands folded in her lap. Marin had stayed home but had texted just before the gavel came down. Say what they won't. Clifton adjusted his robe, tapped his microphone. This hearing will come to order. Chairs squeaked as the audience leaned forward. This is a preliminary misconduct review based on events that occurred on Tuesday afternoon involving officers Trent Mullery and Bryce Fenwick. This court has reviewed body camera footage, public video, dispatch logs, and 6 eyewitness statements. He let that sink in. To be clear, this is not a criminal trial. It is a formal review to determine whether departmental protocol was violated and whether disciplinary action or criminal referral is warranted. He turned toward the defense table. Officers, you will each have the opportunity to respond. You may also call witnesses, as will the committee. Before either lawyer could speak, the courtroom door opened again. The teen from the gas station, the one who filmed the video, walked in with his mother. A marshal guided them to a reserved seat near the front. Clifton glanced down at the updated witness list. Name: Taryn McBride. Age 17. Student J.D. Gethro High School. The courtroom doors shut quietly. A whisper from the gallery. That's the kid from the video. It was immediately hushed. Fenwick's attorney rose first. Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess. Officer Fenwick has expressed concerns about procedural clarity and would like a moment with counsel. Clifton raised an eyebrow. Officer Fenwick, do you wish to delay? Fenwick hesitated, then shook his head slowly. No, sir. You may proceed. The attorney sat down, defeated. Clifton continued. The committee has also requested direct testimony from the witness who recorded the event. We will hear from him shortly. He looked at the young man. Mr. McBride, thank you for coming. We'll call on you soon. Taryn nodded respectfully. Clifton refocused on the table. Officer Mullery, will begin with you. Mullery's attorney stood and began a long clinical explanation about procedure, public safety, split-second decisions, and department pressure. By the time she finished, it had the weight of paperwork, not truth. Clifton didn't respond right away. He simply looked at Mullery and asked, "Did you believe you were making a lawful arrest?" Mallory finally spoke. Based on the information at the time, yes. What was that information? Mallory stiffened. We had a bolo. Be on the lookout for a black male in his mid-40s, driving a silver hybrid SUV reported stolen from a discount store across town. And did the bolo include clothing, license plate, specific identifying markers? It said, gray hoodie. That was enough. Clifton's voice didn't rise. That was enough? Yes, sir. Did the suspect description mention anything about behavior, resistance, or weapons? No, sir. Yet you approached me with your hand on your firearm. Mullery looked straight ahead. For safety. Clifton nodded once, then turned to Fenwick. And you, Officer Fenwick, did you attempt to verify the information before I was placed in cuffs? Fenwick's throat moved before he spoke. No, Your Honor. Did you question the decision? No. Why not? There was a pause. Because I've only been on the force 2 years. Mallory's been here 15. I didn't want to make waves. And what do you want now? He raised his eyes. To fix it. Or at least stop pretending it didn't happen. Clifton looked down at his notes, scribbling one short word, conscience. Then he faced the room again. We are not here to destroy reputations. We are here to restore accountability. But before he could render a decision, a familiar voice came from the doorway. Someone who hadn't spoken yet but who had seen everything. Taryn McBride adjusted his hoodie as he stepped up to the witness stand. He looked younger than he did in the video, still baby-faced with a nervous energy that made him bounce slightly. His mom gave him a short, fierce nod from the front row. Clifton motioned to the bailiff. Please swear the witness in. Taryn raised his right hand and repeated the oath, his voice wavering at first but gaining strength. Once seated, he leaned into the mic and looked directly at Clifton. You're the judge from the video. There were light chuckles in the crowd. Clifton didn't smile. I am. Taryn nodded. Thought so. Mr. McBride, Clifton said calmly, can you describe what you saw at the gas station on Tuesday afternoon? Taryn took a breath. I was walking back to school from lunch. I always cut through that chevron on Myrtle. I saw a silver SUV at pump 3. I saw you standing there just getting gas. That's it. And then the police pulled up fast. Not casual. Like they were already mad. 2 cars. One blocked your exit, the other came behind you. They got out, hands on their belts, like something was going down. I stopped walking. Why? Because I've seen this before. Not with judges though. Just with people who look like me. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. One cop yelled something I didn't hear clearly. You had your hands up. You said something about your ID being inside the car. They didn't listen. They cuffed you right there and they weren't gentle about it. Clifton nodded slowly. Did you see me make any sudden moves? Raise my voice. No, sir. Did I resist? No, sir. Did either officer ask for identification before applying handcuffs? Taryn shook his head. Nope. They didn't ask nothing. Just started treating you like you were already guilty. A murmur went through the gallery. Clifton held up a hand to quiet it. Did you record the entire interaction? Sir. From the moment the first cop walked toward you until they put you in the back of the car. Why did you start recording? Taryn didn't hesitate. Because I didn't trust what I was seeing and I wanted proof. And what did you think when you later found out the man in the cuffs was a judge? Taryn let out a breath. I thought, maybe now they'll care. A silence followed. No one coughed or shuffled papers. Even Mullery looked up for a second. Clifton let the pause breathe. "Thank you, Mr. McBride. Your statement is appreciated." Terran stood to leave, but before walking back to his seat he turned to the courtroom. "I didn't know his name," he said. "I just saw a man getting treated like a suspect because of his face, not his actions. That could have been my uncle. Could have been my dad. Could have been me." Clifton watched him walk away. No drama, no applause, just truth in motion. He turned back to the defense table. "Officer Fenwick, Officer Mullery, you've heard from a witness. You've seen the video. You've read the department report. Do either of you wish to speak as people, not through your lawyers?" The room was still. Mullery's lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, whispering. But it was Fenwick who stood. His voice was small at first. "I didn't know who he was, but I knew what we were doing wasn't right." Clifton looked directly at him. "Then why didn't you say something?" Fenwick looked at the floor. "Because I've only been on the force 2 years. Mullery's been here 15. I didn't want to make waves." "And what do you want now?" He raised his eyes. "To fix it. Or at least stop pretending it didn't happen." Clifton looked down at his notes, scribbling a single word in the corner. "Conscience." Then he faced the room again. "We are not here to destroy reputations. We are here to restore accountability." But before he could render a decision, one final name was called to the stand. It was someone Clifton never expected to face in this context. When the bailiff called her name, Clifton's posture shifted, subtly but inwardly. He hadn't seen it coming. "Detective Elena Navarro, please take the stand." She stepped forward with quiet authority, no notes, no hesitation. Her badge gleamed against her blazer as she walked past Mullery and Fenwick. Mullery kept his eyes straight ahead. Fenwick glanced up, visibly uncomfortable. Navarro had worked internal cases before. She knew where this was going, but today it was personal. After she was sworn in, Clifton leaned forward slightly. "Detective Navarro, how long have you been with the Lafayette Police Department?" 17 years, she answered crisply. 12 of them in investigations, 5 with internal affairs. "And on the afternoon in question, where were you?" "In the precinct. I saw Officers Mullery and Fenwick bring in Judge Baynes. I didn't know who they had in custody until I recognized his face." "What was your reaction?" She took a moment. "Surprise, followed by disbelief and then concern." "Why concern?" "Because I've reviewed over 36 misconduct complaints in the past 2 years. And when I saw the cuffs on Judge Baynes, I knew something wasn't right. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He looked like he'd seen this before, but never from that side of the desk." Geneva in the front row looked down quietly. "Did you intervene?" "I asked why he was being detained. Mullery said he fit a vehicle description tied to a theft. I asked if they had run the plates before the arrest. They hadn't." Clifton remained composed, but his fingers tapped twice on the bench. "And what happened next?" "I ordered the cuffs removed. Then I called Lieutenant Linley. We reviewed the footage and began formal documentation for a misconduct hearing." Clifton paused. "Detective, based on your experience, was protocol followed during the initial stop?" "No," she replied firmly. "Not even close. In your view, what should have happened?" "They should have approached, asked for identification, verified ownership of the vehicle. There was no urgency, no fleeing suspect. Just assumptions." Clifton leaned back. "Would this be considered a pattern for Officer Mullery?" She hesitated for a half-second. This would be his 4th incident involving questionable stops in the last 6 years. A murmur rippled across the room. Clifton raised a hand for silence. "And Officer Fenwick?" "Clean file," she said. "But this moment shows why silence can still do harm." Clifton gave a slight nod. "Thank you." Detective Navarro stepped down and returned to her seat near the back. But the weight of her testimony lingered. Clifton looked at the defense table. Both attorneys whispered to their clients. Mullery's jaw was clenched. Fenwick just stared at the floor. Then Clifton turned his attention to the courtroom. "There's something I want everyone to understand," he began. "Misconduct doesn't always come with bruises or broken bones. Sometimes, it shows up as a pair of handcuffs slapped on someone without a question being asked. Sometimes it's a silence from a partner who knows better but stays quiet." He paused. "And sometimes it's a system that forgets titles don't change how you're treated." The courtroom remained still as if the walls themselves were listening. I was lucky. I had a name, a job, a family. I had cameras. I had people who recognized my face. But if I had been someone else, without a title, without an audience, would we even be here today? He turned back to the officers. You have the right to wear that badge, but with it comes the responsibility to see people. Really see them. Not their hoodie. Not their car. Not the parts you've decided are suspicious. He leaned forward, elbows on the bench. I don't know if you'll remember this day 5 years from now, but I will. And so will everyone who watched that video. But with every eye in the courtroom locked on him, there was still one final thing left to do, and it couldn't wait any longer. Clifton sat quietly for a moment, letting the courtroom sit in its own stillness. No rustling papers, no whispers, no camera clicks, just one long collective breath. He glanced at the clock above the chamber doors, 10:42 a.m. Then slowly he reached for the decision folder beside him. His tone didn't change. He didn't raise his voice or pound the desk. He didn't need to. Everyone was already leaning in. This court has reviewed the incident based on video evidence, witness testimony, and department records. I am issuing the following findings. He looked at Mullery first. Sergeant Trent Mullery demonstrated reckless conduct during a non-urgent field engagement, including detention without proper cause, failure to verify identity, and unnecessary escalation. You are hereby referred to the Lafayette Police Department's Office of Internal Affairs for disciplinary action, and this court recommends immediate suspension pending a full review of your previous misconduct cases. Mullery's lawyer stood as if to object, but Clifton raised a hand. You may appeal this recommendation to the Oversight Committee, but your actions on Tuesday speak for themselves. Then he turned to Fenwick. Officer Bryce Fenwick, your inaction played a significant role in what occurred. While you did not initiate the arrest, you failed to intervene. However, your testimony today showed a recognition of that failure and a willingness to take responsibility. This court recommends departmental retraining, temporary desk duty, and the assignment of a mentor officer, preferably someone outside of your direct chain of command. Fenwick closed his eyes briefly, exhaling. It wasn't relief. It was something else. Perhaps regret finally given structure. Clifton turned to address the entire courtroom. Let me be clear, this is not about me. This is about what happens when perception replaces policy. When judgment replaces procedure. When silence becomes complicity. He let that settle for a beat. We tell ourselves this country works because we have systems, but a system is only as honest as the people operating it. He looked toward the young people in the crowd. Students from the local university, a few teenagers near the back, and Taryn sitting quietly with his mother. I wasn't targeted because I'm a judge. I was targeted because someone saw what they expected to see, not what was there. It just so happens that this time they picked the wrong man to dehumanize. Geneva watched him closely, her hand resting over her heart. Clifton's voice dropped lower. You shouldn't need a title to be treated like a citizen. You shouldn't have to go viral to be believed. You shouldn't have to wear a robe to be respected. He took off his glasses and set them gently on the bench. I have spent nearly 2 decades on this side of the courtroom, and I can tell you this with certainty. Fear does not justify laziness. A badge is not armor against accountability. And the only thing worse than making a bad call is refusing to learn from it. He stood slowly. This hearing is now closed. Then came the gavel. Not loud, just one deliberate strike, sharp and final. People stood. No one clapped, no one cheered, but something had shifted. As Clifton exited through the side door, Taryn stood up and gave a slight nod. A quiet acknowledgement between two people who never should have met the way they did, but who would never forget it. Outside the sun was high. Reporters gathered like birds, but Clifton didn't stop. Geneva was waiting by the car, holding the door open. You did what you had to do, she said as he slid inside. I did what they needed me to do, he replied. They drove in silence for a few minutes, then Geneva asked, You still want to stop by Marin's dorm later? Yeah, he said. But let's get some coffee first. Back at the courthouse, as the crowd spilled out onto the steps, someone chalked 3 simple words onto the sidewalk near the entrance. Respect without rank. It didn't need a hashtag. It didn't need a campaign. It just needed to be true. If this story moved you, share it. Speak about it. Talk to your kids, your friends, your neighbors. We don't change anything by staying quiet. And if you want more stories that speak the truth, subscribe and stay tuned.